It had reached a progression to where the plies of the drum shells were so thin that a 8-ply shell now was the equivalent of a 6-ply shell of 15 years before, and it was like pulling my hair out wanting to have these old shells, you know, so I could build drums in the vein of what was built of years ago. So that was a lot of the obsession. My name is Bill Cardwell, and I work at C&C Custom Drums. I started fixing up and selling old drums back in the early 80s. There weren't very many people custom building drums back then. So I made the decision, I'm going to start making drums and try to make them as much as possible like the old drums were made. The sound was unique and the sound was different. However, in 1968, when Bonham was playing a kit back then, it wasn't a vintage kit. It was a new kit, you know? So that sound wasn't a vintage sound. It was a new sound. We've taken the custom aspect of C&C over to Gladstone. I wanted to build a shell that was this many plies and this thick and would do this and that and another, and there was no source to do so. Our goal is to do things of old, but even come up with some new ideas and do some different things that hopefully 70 years from now will be things from days of old, you know.
My name is Brian Anderson. I am the shell maker for Gladstone Custom Shells. I run all the machines and make all the cuts and build all the shells for Gladstone. We're going back to the vintage style, thicker plies, less glue. The glue is going to kill the sound of the drum. Least amount of glue and the best kind of wood in there.
We're trying to do things with modern equipment and have stricter specifications than what they had back in the 1960s on it, and make it as perfect as possible, but still hold as true as possible to that sound. Hopefully even make it even better.
With our own machines, we get to play around and try different things and see what we can come up with. The way things flow, we can get them out pretty quick. I mean, within a week or two of your order, they're in the process of getting made. Bill can just walk down here and say, hey, Brian, I need the 24, and we don't have to wait for one to come in that we ordered. I can actually whip out an entire set in a day if they have an emergency like that. I know where the boss likes to cut his bearing edge, and he tells me how he wants the plies to stack in there. He wants a certain grain, the peak of his bearing edge. So I will comply with the way he wants to do it, putting it in the machine that way. If somebody wanted a custom set and say they wanted the bearing edge to hit under all vertical grain, we can configure the shell to match what they're after. If people were ordering a stain kit, I can pull a real good piece of A grade and cut the entire outside of the drum shell out of the same sheet, so the stain's going to match. If we get a bird's eye or quilting or something, I can get it all out of the same sheet, which really helps when they go to do their stain.
We're not out soliciting people's business per se, as far as just throwing it out to the customer base, which is custom drum builders, and saying, hey, look, here's an alternative. We're not saying we're better. We're definitely not saying we're the same. We are a little bit different, and it is a custom built product because we're going to do everything we can to build the drum shell that you want built, and hopefully it's going to produce the sound you want it to sound like. This generation of drummer is much more intelligent than my generation of drummer, and that's the cool thing about what we're doing is we have to get inside the guy's head who's buying the drum and know what he wants to. When he sits down behind a drum set and he hits the drum, he's already got some preconceived notion of what he wants that drum to sound like. It's our job to figure that out and build that drum. It's a whole different world in that aspect because the customer base is more knowledgeable, and a custom builder's ability to distinguish all those different sounds that you're going to get out of a vintage drum is quite a bit different than what was demanded by the drum buying public, 25 years ago. Our mentality hasn't been try to be the flavor of the moment, try to cater to, you know, what's the latest whim, build something of lasting value. What motivates me to come in here and build drums? Frankly, I look at the guy who is requesting the drum now and the sound that he wants that drum to be a temporary occupant of that drum. That drum hopefully is going to outlive him and me both. Hopefully it'll end up being just a legacy. I mean, I know that sounds self-centered as hell, but I wanted to do something unique and different and say, hey, you know what? We actually cared. We actually tried our best, and hopefully people ongoing will like it and care for it.